Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I don't usually talk about sales when they're ongoing and talk about what games are great values or things like that, but I actually had a couple of people reach out to me saying, hey, with the Steam summer sale going on over the next, well, it's already been going on for about a week, but it goes until the 13th, so we've still got about a week left, a little bit less than that. But had a couple of people reach out to me since the sale started back on June 30th, I think it was, saying, hey, can you do a video talking about what the best deals are in the Steam sale? I can't say I've looked exhaustively across all of Steam, but what I can say is I looked through my library of games that I've been playing over the last couple of years, and I decided, why not take a look at that, see what's on sale, see what I think are the best deals out there, or what are the best games that are on sale right now, and kind of just share my thoughts and let you guys know about it in case you hadn't looked through it. One caveat, obviously, I can only comment on games that I have played. I'm not just looking for the highest percentage discounts. I'm looking at games that I can vouch for, that in my opinion are worth a purchase in the first place. I don't usually make value judgments. Everybody's preferences are different, but I can speak to these games as saying I think they're good. And then also, this video is looking only at war games. So there's so many strategy games out there. There's no way I could narrow a list down to just 5. In fact, I didn't even do that for this video. But there's no way I could narrow a list down of strategy games as a whole. So really what we're talking about in this video is just war games. So without further ado, let's jump in. My top 5 war games of the 2023 Steam Summer Sale. The sale goes until the 13th of July, by the way. Before we jump into the list, I'm going to list a couple of games that I think are honorable mention. They're games that I think are really, really good and I enjoyed, and they're, I think, worth checking out, but they didn't make the top 5. So the honorable mention, there's 3 games in this list. I'll just go through quickly. First off, Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. It's on the honorable mention list because I haven't played it a ton. I've played it a little bit, but it's the premier sort of grog Eastern Front World War II game. It uses turn-based resolution. Definitely not a game for everybody, but there is probably, other than the other Gary Grigsby games like War in the Pacific and War in the East 1 and War in the West, I don't think there's anything else out there like War in the East that both has its level of depth and complexity and is also newer in terms of release dates. Maybe kind of sort of decisive campaigns, but really I'd say Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2 usually sells for $80. It is 30% off, so you can get it for $55.99. Another game in the honorable mention list is Strategic Command World War I. Strategic Command World War I is just one of a number of Strategic Command games. Any of the Strategic Command games could be on this list. I've played them a lot on the channel. I enjoy them a lot. They're turn-based war games that are kind of at a more of a strategic level, looking at a number of different conflicts. In the World War I game, they look at World War I from 1914 to 1918. I think it's the premier of the Strategic Command games. I think the system works the best for World War I with their two-week turns and the way that the fronts progress and the way that the technology progresses. I really think it's the best and most enjoyable games. And I also think, like, I enjoy the Civil War game, and I'll probably play the mod for that. That is for the Russo-Japanese War. But I will say that of the system, of this I Go You Go system that exists for Strategic Command, I think the game that fits the war that fits the system the best of all the games they've released is the World War I game, and so that's why it's on the list. Strategic Command World War I usually sells for $39.99. It is 60% off, and so you can pick it up for $15.99. By the way, there's links in the description for all of this if you are interested. And then the final game on the honorable mention is kind of a trick. This is Cauldrons of War Bundle. So Cauldrons of War Barbarossa and Cauldrons of War Stalingrad are 2 different games that look at the Eastern Front at kind of a Command HQ point of view. You don't move little chits around the map. You basically make decisions as events pop up during these 2 campaigns, either Barbarossa or Stalingrad. You have to make key strategic decisions that will influence various factors on the map, and then you have to make decisions about where you're going to allocate your resources to attack, which units you're going to attack with, what types of attacks you're going to do, but it's all at like a division or above level. And so it abstracts a lot of stuff out. The maps could use a little bit of work. It's like a one-man show, so it's not the most polished of games, but it's really one of the few games I think that really does a good job of being like, hey, you don't care about telling your men to entrench. Well, I guess that is technically in the game, but you don't care about all the intricate details. You're a commander of an entire front, right? Like you're commanding the entire front of the Eastern Front during this campaign. And so there are things you care about, but they're not like, what is Private 225 doing in the 234th Division? Or do I need to like tell the trucks to bring their supplies forward? Or do I need to count how many rounds of ammo they have left? Or do I need to tell them like, hey, move here and flank this unit over here? Like it does a good job, I think, of abstracting things. So Cauldrons of War, Barbarossa, and Stalingrad are both on sale. There is a bundle that links the two games together. Usually that bundle is $29.99. It's 51% off, so it's available for $14.68 right now. And those are the three honorable mentions on this list. Okay, and so let's get into the top 5, I guess, games of the 2023 Steam Summer Sale. At number 5 is The Great War Western Front. It's a game developed by Petroglyph Games and published by Frontier Foundry. It is a game that puts you in the shoes of either a theater commander on the Western Front, where you have to assign divisions and move them across the front, prepare for offensives, build up supplies, manage research and development, and then going and actually fighting the battles on a tactical battlefield that does evolve over time. The game's not perfect. I feel like the sort of persistent battlefield isn't as persistent as I would like it to be. There are times that the AI is a little bit easy to roll over on the map, and there's a little bit of repetitiveness to some of the battles because you have to keep fighting on the same hex until you've reduced all of its defensive traits, which means you can sweep the enemy off that battlefield, but then still have to do that 2 or 3 more times depending on the map you're attacking. That being said, it is one of the few games that really deals with the Western Front in World War I. The trench building is quite enjoyable. The technology and the evolution of the battlefield over time is very apparent. You go from, kind of walking your way forward with artillery and hoping you don't run into a machine gun nest to tanks and chemical weapons and all sorts of things like that. You go from basic slit trenches that are not designed to withstand impacts from heavy artillery to having concrete dugouts that you can move troops into where they become immune from shell fire, and then you can pull them out of there when the enemy assault moves forward. You see battlefields evolve from largely tree and forested terrain to crater marked and strewn with barbed wire. It is a game that I really enjoy. The 2.0 patch recently came out, which made a bunch of changes. They added some, I believe, French colonial troops from Africa. They added some Bavarian troops because the Germans weren't all Prussian soldiers. They had units that were Bavarian units and Prussian units and different types of units there. And they've made some additional, I believe they added a new French heavy tank, and they've made some additional tweaks and balance adjustments to the game to try and make it to address some of the issues that I was talking about earlier in this segment. So The Great War Western Front, it's a game I really enjoy, and it is normally it's available for $34.99. It is 25% off for the sale, and so you can pick it up for $26.24. Definitely a game I recommend at least looking into if it sounds interesting, because we need more games like this. There's not a lot out there, and Petroglyph is an established studio that makes high quality games. There's a good amount of polish. This doesn't feel sort of like a win. I saw someone talking about how so many war games feel like they're still Windows XP based, and this does not. This feels like a fully modern game and is quite enjoyable. At number 4 is Grand Tactician: The Civil War, which is a grand strategy and tactical war game. It seems like a lot of the games that I have on this list fall into that category. It is developed by Grand Engineer Corp, but really it's a small company. When they started, I think they had 4 or 5 people, and it's a man. This game tries to do so much. I don't even know where to start here. Basically, you can fight the entire American Civil War from the initial states seceding all the way through to its conclusion in 1865. It has a strategic map that goes all the way from the East Coast in the U.S. All the way to the, the furthest. I think it goes to New Mexico, but certainly goes all the way west to Oklahoma. And it covers everything. It's a game that makes you basically you're a combination of, I guess, the Secretary of War and the Supreme Commander of the armies. And so you have to deal with things like raising brigades, equipping brigades, purchasing weapons. You can, if you're on either side, you can buy weapons from overseas. So, if you're the Confederates, you don't have as much industrial power, so you might lean more heavily on imports from England or other European countries. And you also have to purchase artillery, and then you have to raise units and batteries. You have to assign those units to divisions or brigades, or not brigades. You have to assign them to divisions or corps or armies. You have to manage research and development in terms of researching new policies that you can implement that will influence the game, while also influencing the general political situation. Politics matters. Support in different states matter. You can launch raids to destroy different industrial groups. There's this whole big economy that looks, from an aesthetic point of view, it's definitely not Victoria, but from an aesthetic point of view, it looks a little like the original Victoria. And there's all these different elements in the economy that feed into each other. You don't really manage the economy in the game, but it does have a supply and demand mechanic. So if you buy a whole bunch of ironclads, that could drive up the price of iron, which could dramatically influence your ability to buy more ironclads. Or if you buy a whole bunch of weapons and there's a bunch of battles that are being fought, it can influence the price of gunpowder or ammunition or those kind of things that could influence your ability to sustain the war. If the enemy takes some of your key farming regions as the Confederacy, it could cause spikes in food prices, which can influence support for the war back home. So the economy is it's somewhat hands-off. You can build buildings or do things like that, but really it's not a game about microing the economy, but the economy is there. It's a game about building armies, equipping them, marching them around on the map. And then when you meet any army on this strategic map, then you fight a tactical map on a tactical battlefield. I think they technically use 2D sprites for the soldiers, but it's 3D battlefields. It is incredible. It's not flawless either. It does have its weaknesses. The AI, last time I played, it wasn't great on the strategic AI, but it is a one-of-a-kind game. It's kind of one of those games that growing up as a little bit of a Civil War, aficionado, you were like, man, I really wish there was something like this. And that's what they tried to make with Grand Tactician, the Civil War. There's also a DLC that's coming out soon. We don't know exactly when, but they're saying the summer, where it's going to add an element of role playing. So like in the base game, you assign officers. Different officers have different traits. They can become defamed, popular, other things like that. They can increase in influence and get promoted. They can get cashiered. But in the DLC, you're going to actually be one of those officers. And so you can have your career rise from the regimental ranks all the way, presumably, to Army Command. And that DLC is coming out soon. So the game is on sale now. So you'll need the base game to play it when the DLC comes out. So that's, maybe it's a good time to pick it up. The game's normally $44.99. It's 25% off. And that makes it $33.74 right now on Steam. At number 3 on my list is Unity of Command 2. Unity of Command 2 is a turn-based war game that, in my opinion, is pretty approachable from someone who's not deep into the grog-type games, but it does some things that are different than a lot of war games as well. That is why it's on this list. So it's a turn-based war game that is scenario-based. So what that basically means is you have a bunch of battles from at least in the base game. There's a bunch of DLCs, but in the base game, you're the Western Allies, and you fight from Tunisia all the way up through to the end of the war in Germany. There's a bunch of DLCs that add other sides, other conflicts. There's Wehrmacht DLCs, there's Soviet DLCs. There's a lot of other things there. But what this game does differently than a lot of turn-based games is, like, you've got a bunch of different units that represent, generally, I think they're divisions of various strengths and experiences and equipment. And you basically have to take objectives on a map, on an operational map, versus the enemy on time to win the battle. But what this game that does is different is it is very logistical based. So it basically requires you to manage your supply lines or things get really dicey really fast. So you have to manage where your trucks, where your depots are located, how many trucks you want to assign to those depots, how far those depots are from the front line, how far those depots are from railheads, which always have supply if there's an unobstructed connection to the edge of the map. You can only have a depot so far off of a main road. Enemy units and sort of zones of control can influence your supply. There can be disruption or lower levels of supply if you don't have a good feed of supplies in from the edge of the map. So it's really a logistical war game in a way that a lot of different games aren't. And Unity of Command 1 was this as well. But Unity of Command 2 went from the Eastern Front, which is what Unity of Command 1 was, and then to the Western Front. And then it added a bunch of other things as well. So it's a little bit more puzzly. You can do things like set piece attacks, bombardment attacks, feints, or other things like that to wear an enemy down to help you break through the line. But it's a really interesting game, and I think it is a tremendous value right now on the sale. I played it a lot on the channel. I'm not doing it justice in my description of it here, but I really enjoy Unity of Command. And if you're interested at all in turn-based war games, I highly recommend you check it out. Very well polished, and definitely something that I think is worth taking a look at. It is normally $29.99, but on sale it is 75% off, so you can actually get it for just $7.49 during the Steam sale. At number 2 on my list is War on the Sea, which is a naval war game that takes place in the South Pacific during the Solomons campaigns. And so this is a game that really is, I think, tremendous. It's an operational centric game. So you kind of have an operational map of the South Pacific. You know, it goes up to north of Guadalcanal, I think all the way to Rabaul. It's been a little while since I've played it. And it also goes as far south as Espiritu Santo. So it's really that Guadalcanal and then the leap up the Solomons. So the late 42 up into 43 campaigns that you have there. Port Moresby, I believe, is also on the map. But it's a really unique game, and I think it's a really good game. And so what this game is about is, as the Allies, your objective is to obviously take, I believe the objective for the Allied campaign, you take Guadalcanal, and then there's another base, Tulagi, I think, that you have to take. And then you've got to build them up basically to the point where it's just not going to be possible for Japan to take them back. There's different levels that you can build the bases up. And as you build them up, they get stronger. They get different air wings or things like that defend them. And this represents sort of the way that the South Pacific campaign worked, right? The Allies went and tried to take Guadalcanal, and then the Japanese attempted to come in and retake it, or at least attrit the airfield at Henderson Field down there and prevent the Allies from getting it too strong. But once the Allies have a really strong foothold in the Solomons, things get a lot dicier for the Japanese real quick. The campaign starts off historically with the Japanese having some really early and really successful naval battles against the Allies. But as the Allies strengthen their hold, Henderson kind of becomes this point where the Japanese can't reinforce because the Allies have too much air power in the area, and the Japanese don't have an effective way to project that air power. They can fly planes down from Rabaul and attack, but they're not as effective as they could be at extreme ranges like that. And so this is a game where you have to put together task forces of ships, escorts or merchant ships. You've got to send those into the slot or into the straits, drop off troops, drop off fuel so that you can build your base up. It is a game about getting logistics to where you need them, protecting that logistical train as it advances. And when enemy ships come in and engage your task forces or things like that, or where enemy aircraft attack your task forces, then you go down into a pretty decent looking 3D battle, whether it's an air attack on a convoy, whether it's a naval attack on a convoy. Then you get to fight these battles out in real time combat. And it is, I think, incredibly unique. It's kind of a little bit like Task Force 1942, which was a Microprose game way back in the day. Kind of has elements of like great naval battles of the North Atlantic, but obviously it's in the Pacific. But I think it's really unique. I love that it's an operational game. I love that logistics is the core of this game and how you win. The AI it seems like a common trend in all these things. The AI needs some work. And then there's also like heavily modded. Like I've seen there's some mods out there that move the map to the Dutch East Indies where you can fight in 1942 if you download mods for that. And there's a whole bunch of different mods for the game as well. I know Wolfpack 345 does a lot of videos on this. I did when it first came out, but the game is definitely more polished now than it was then. And like I said, check out Wolfpack's channel if you're interested in seeing more of this. It is currently 50% off. The game normally sells for $39.99, which means it's available for $19.99. And I definitely would recommend checking that out. And at number 1 on my list for top 5 war games in the 2023 Steam Summer Sale, Command Modern Operations, which is a game by Warfare Sims and is published by Matrix and Slytherin Games. This is a spiritual successor to the Harpoon series, if you're familiar with those games. Basically, it allows you to fight a host of hypothetical or real battles. It focuses on air and naval combat. Land combat is notionally there, but it is not where the game shines. The game, again, air and naval operations is where this game shines. It's even used, there's a professional version used, I believe, by the Marines, I think, in some war game simulations. And I've seen some stuff about conventions in Europe too, so it might be used over there also. But this is not going to win beauty contests in 3D representation or anything like that. The game does have a plugin that you can buy for TacView, which has a very rudimentary 3D sort of imagery thing. I think TacView is also used for DCS for some folks. But that's not the core of the game. The core of the game is sort of a 2D map with different icons that represent ships and aircraft and missiles, and resolving scenarios that can take place anywhere between the end of World War II to the near future. So if you ever wondered, like, hey, what would happen in a hypothetical conflict between U.S. carriers and Chinese carriers in the South China Sea, the game can show you that. The game has scenarios about the conflicts in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors, with airstrikes on various land targets. Land combat may not be core to the game, but airstrikes on land targets certainly are. It can look at, campaigns that would have occurred in the Persian Gulf during the 80s. Could look at hypothetical World War III gone hot. You can import different overlays or different bases. It has an entire globe for its map that you just scroll in and out and zoom in and out of. It's pretty damn impressive. And this is just an absolute gem of a game that is maybe more of a simulation than a game. Like, when you say top games, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a game? We could get philosophical about that, but this is, I think, an incredible simulation that has a huge database of a wide variety of weapons, basically every single weapon that you can think of over the last 80 years that would have been used on any of these platforms, frigates, submarines, their radar equipment, what kit did they have, what type of radar, what were its performances. Do you want to reenact the Falkland Wars? You can do that. I wish the game had better mechanics for a campaign. If I was to say one negative thing, it's like it's real time, so you play things through, pausable real time, so you play things through, and when a scenario is over, like, the game doesn't have, units don't regenerate. I think reinforcements can arrive, but like units don't regenerate per se. So there's not really a campaign. It's kind of set piece scenarios. And they do have DLC that are kind of campaigns where there's like linked battles. So it has that, but man, if this game could have more of a dynamic campaign, that would be a true game changer. But either way, it is really impressive to see, a wall of missiles coming at you. You see your cruisers or destroyers throwing up SM2s or whatever to intercept the missiles, watching as their tracks sort of collide and watching to see if they hit or if they don't. Planning airstrikes can be just a really interesting experience to try and deal with. Like, all right, this package is going to deal with SED to knock out enemy air defenses. This package is going to go through to the target to hit the airfield. We've got a bar cap patrol, making sure if enemy aircraft come at us, we can deal with them there, worrying about where the different radars and SAM sites are and whether you've got a corridor into your target, and trying to plan all of that out. Like, it is a mission planner's dream in a lot of ways. And I think this is just You know, it's one of those few games out there. I'd put it up there with War in the East, where there's just really nothing else modern like it. Again, Harpoon was like it back in the day, but Harpoon's old now, and Command Modern Operations is relatively new. The game usually, you know, it's a one-of-a-kind game, so it sells for a one-of-a-kind price. It normally sells for $79.99. But with the current Steam sale, it is 50% off, and so you can get that for a much more reasonable price at around $39.99, so below or at $40, which mainstream gamers are probably more used to paying the latter price than the former, and so definitely something worth checking out. That's Command Modern Operations at number 1 on my list for top 5 war games in 2023 Steam Summer Sale. That's all I got for you guys. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I hope it provided you some useful information, some things to look at, see if you're interested in checking them out. The sale runs until the 13th of January, so you got a few more days to look at that. And I think tomorrow we'll probably return to our regularly scheduled programming and start playing some more games again. But thanks again for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Leave your thoughts below. And until next time, as always, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.